We think Australians should invest more overseas and put more of their accumulated savings and growing pile of savings offshore, even at these exchange rates. That's for two reasons. One is that the Australian market is very heavily concentrated in one or two segments. We know that. It's the financial sector, the banks, and also the resource sector, where two stocks account for almost 25% of the cap-weighted index. I think about 6 stocks in Australia also account for 70% of the franked dividends as well. So you've got a high level of concentration in Australia, which obviously isn't optimal from a diversification point of view. So getting exposure to technology companies, getting exposure to healthcare companies, consumer companies, these are very important things to do for a balanced portfolio. So we would encourage Australians to look for their equity exposure offshore. The same is true as in fixed income. The Australian fixed income market here is very dominated by the same financial companies. The banks issue a lot of the paper into the fixed income market, property companies likewise. So you really need to think about getting more exposure into fixed income as well to run a fully diversified, almost bulletproof portfolio. The second reason is return. And the return from a mix of countries, because of the diversification benefits, is always likely to be superior in return terms and risk-adjusted return terms than simply from one country such as Australia. So if you look at the chart that we've produced here in terms of 3-year rolling returns, 5-year rolling returns and 10-year rolling returns, you can see that at no point has it been better to have Australia alone. It's always been better to have at least half of your assets in international equities. Yeah, the Australian economy has had some tough times recently, and if you came from outer space and looked at Australia, you'd see a fairly indebted economy with very cyclical, highly volatile earnings, and you'd think that the PE should be quite low. But what we see, there is a silver lining, what we see happening is newer companies are starting up, people have travelled overseas, they see what's needed, and so the service part of the economy is really being run in quite a groovy and global best practice way. And so data management, consumer service companies that help the people who spend marketing dollars understand where those marketing dollars are optimally spent. That's quite interesting. And the IPO market here has actually generally sailed quite well. So there is hope for Australia insofar as the smaller companies run by entrepreneurs are actually doing it right, much more so than the very heavy capital intensive dinosaurs.